If you have not watched the previous video, please watch it first. The link is available in the description or in the I button.
Welcome to Chapter 6 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. In this chapter, we will explore how working to learn, rather than working only for money, can completely transform your career, financial future, and life. Okay, so let's dive right into this. We're looking at a pretty stark contrast between two totally different philosophies on work and education. You've got Robert Kiyosaki's highly educated dad, a guy with a PhD, who completely bought into the dogma of specialization. His whole thing was, study hard, get a degree, find a safe, secure job, and work for that paycheck. But then on the flip side, his rich dad, who never even finished the 8th grade, pushed for the exact opposite. He basically said, you want to generalize, you need to know a little about a lot, and most importantly, you should be working to learn, not just grinding it out for money.
Now think about the ultimate trap for the modern worker. Have you ever heard that the acronym for a job, JOB, stands for just over broke? Well, it's kind of true. Once people get caught up in this endless cycle of paying bills, it's literally like they're hamsters on a wheel. Their legs are spinning a mile a minute, they're working incredibly hard, but come tomorrow morning, they're still in the exact same cage. They're basically trading their time for short-term pay and benefits, while completely turning a blind eye to the long-term reality of where they're heading. And this bleak management reality totally hits the nail on the head. The saying goes, workers work hard enough to not be fired, and owners pay just enough so that workers won't quit. I mean, wow. If you look at the pay scales out there today, there's a pretty harsh truth to that statement. The net result is that most people just never get ahead. They're doing exactly what society taught them to do, seeking job security. But hyper-focusing on that short-term safety net, it usually ends up being a complete disaster for their long-term financial independence.
Which leads us to a huge, glaring question. If traditional education and talent are so highly prized by society, why on earth do so many incredibly talented people struggle financially? Seriously, the world is absolutely full of brilliant, gifted, highly educated poor people. So, to really answer this, let's look at a fascinating story from the book about a super talented professional who just couldn't seem to break out of that financial struggle.
Years ago, Robert Kiyosaki was actually being interviewed by this brilliant young newspaper reporter over in Singapore. She was an absolutely fantastic writer, but she was super frustrated. She desperately wanted to be a best-selling author, but she was struggling to make ends meet. So Robert suggested that she take a few courses in sales and marketing to boost her career. Well, she was deeply offended. She was a professionally trained writer, and she flat out refused to learn the business side of writing. To her, salespeople were basically just crooks. But here's the absolute game changer of a point Robert made to her. He pointed out the title of his own success. He is a best-selling author, not a best-writing author. Actually, scratch that, she was a way better writer than him. But because she was missing just one or two essential skills, specifically sales and marketing, her immense talent was totally bottlenecked. For a lot of people, they literally just need to learn and master one extra skill, and their income could absolutely skyrocket.
This perfectly illustrates what we can call the hamburger paradox. Whenever Robert asks his classes, hey, how many of you can cook a better hamburger than McDonald's? Almost every single hand in the room shoots up. But if they can make a better burger, why is McDonald's making billions while they aren't? It's simple. McDonald's focuses on mastering the business systems to sell and deliver that burger. Talented people usually get bogged down perfecting the hamburger itself while completely ignoring the actual systems required to sell the whole shebang.
And that brings us to the very real danger of over-specialization. Robert's educated dad became this highly specialized government employee. But you know what happened? When he fell out of favor with the governor and lost his job, he was left incredibly vulnerable. His hyper-specialized skills just didn't transfer over to the private sector. The truth is, if you become too highly specialized, you're almost definitely going to need a labor union to protect you down the line, simply because you've become totally dependent on one single industry or one employer for your survival.
Now, what's really fascinating about Rich Dad's alternative philosophy is how wealthy people actually train their successors. They don't take a bright young employee and lock them into a single department to become a specialist. No way. Instead, they bounce them around from department to department. They train them to see how cash flow works, how marketing operates, how the legal team functions. They're grooming them to know a little bit about a lot so they can eventually manage the entire system.
And this brilliantly illustrates the synergy of business systems, which is often called the BI triangle. Notice how cash flow forms the absolute base of the triangle. Then you move up through communications, systems, legal, and finally product is sitting up there at the very top. The product, like our hamburger from earlier, is actually the smallest piece of the wealth puzzle. It's the synergy of all these other foundational skills, backed by strong leadership and a solid mission, that builds true, lasting wealth.
So let's take all of that and see how it builds into the cash flow quadrant. On the left side of the quadrant, you've got the E for employee and the S for specialist or self-employed. Now, our traditional schools are built to train people for this left side. But if you want to make the jump to the right side, the B for business owner and I for investor, you have to gather information from all different sectors. You absolutely cannot rely on just a single specialized skill if your goal is to operate on the right side of this board.
Making that leap to the right side of the quadrant really requires 3 major management skills. First up, you have to be able to manage cash flow. Second, you have to manage systems. And third, the management of people, which honestly includes having the humility and skill to hire and work with people who are way smarter than you in certain technical areas. Mastering these 3 pillars is what actually allows you to escape the rat race and successfully run your own business.
But taking a step back, beyond just management, the absolute bedrock skill for personal and financial success is communication. And specifically, we're talking about sales and marketing. This isn't just about pushing a product on someone. It's about the ability to successfully communicate with another human being. That could be a customer, an employee, your boss, or yes, even your spouse. Essential communication skills like writing, speaking, and negotiating, those form the very foundation of a successful life.
So why do so many people actively avoid learning sales? Well, it usually boils down to one massive roadblock: the fear of rejection. It's not that they can't figure out the mechanics of selling, it's that they are genuinely terrified of hearing the word no. And that's exactly why Robert often recommends picking up a side gig in network marketing. You don't necessarily do it for the paycheck, but rather for their intensive training programs. They literally force you to face that fear of rejection head-on and build effective communication bridges. Look, stepping out of your comfort zone to learn these intimidating new skills takes a huge amount of self-discipline. But you know, life is a lot like going to the gym. The absolute most painful part is just making the decision to go and walking through those front doors. Once you're actually in motion, it can be really rewarding. If you can push yourself to work in order to learn, the long-term dividends are going to be absolutely massive.
Now, combine those fresh communication skills with this 4-part synergy of financial intelligence, and making money with money becomes so much easier. First, you need accounting, which is your financial literacy to actually read the numbers. Then investing, which is the science of making your money work for you. Next is an understanding of markets, meaning you grasp supply and demand. And finally, the law, which is all about utilizing corporate protections and tax advantages. This specific combination is exactly what separates the ultra-rich from the middle class.
So I really want you to ask yourself a tough question right now. Are you looking deep into the future, or are you just looking until your next paycheck? Is your current daily grind genuinely teaching you the diverse set of skills you're going to need to eventually buy your financial freedom? Because if you're only showing up for the money and the short-term security today, you might be setting yourself up for some serious vulnerability tomorrow.
Okay, let's summarize the major takeaways from this chapter. Remember, the single most powerful asset you possess is your mind. You have to invest in your financial education before you invest in literally anything else. Look for jobs specifically to learn new skills, like taking a sales role just to conquer your fear of rejection, rather than just clocking in for a salary. Master how to manage cash flow, systems, and people, and whatever you do, beware of the long-term trap of over-specialization.
Ultimately, it comes down to a choice. Are you going to spend your entire life working incredibly hard for money, or will you invest your time working to learn the exact skills that will eventually buy your freedom? The choice is 100% yours. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for the next video.